You could do a pickup in Rose Bay and be back at lunch before your pizza's even cold. 400 to 3,600 revs. You're just sipping the juice of these 400s. They don't even feel like they've woken up. G'day fellas, beautiful afternoon here on Sydney Harbour today. It's a winter's day, but the sun's quite nice. So perfect opportunity to bring this test drive video to you. Today we are on the Adrenalina 10.5. This thing has got twin 400 horsepower, so it's got a high power to weight ratio, 2.5 tonnes empty, about 560 litres of fuel, plus the weight of the motors. And this is a great hull. This is my first drive. We're about to accelerate and go through the motions, but I have been sitting downstairs in the bed flying the drone. And my first impressions are easy speeds, really easy speeds. 30 knots, 40 knots, really effortless is actually probably the word I'm going to use, which was immediately evident to me. So if you just want a boat that's going to be great for zipping around inshore and offshore, this could be something for you. Dan Jones is my name. Welcome to Dan's Boat Life, and test drive video starts right now. I love 400s, by the way. These motors are great. So no trim tabs. We got active trim, but I've turned that off, and we just have trim on the motors. But just a little bit of gas. I'm actually going to turn the hat around for this review, and hopefully the wind is not going to interfere with my microphone, because we do have a lot of wind coming over the decks today. Yeah, so really simple boat to drive. I've got the digital throttle. I have got my safety strap on today because low sides. I don't expect to be getting thrown around because it's a very stable boat, but I'll just play it safe. And you know, this is easy, social, sexy boating in a boat like this. This is, you know, this is heading into maxi rib territory, in my opinion. Once you're getting up to a rib of this size, you get a large number of people. She's going to chop up most of the chop. I'm going through some ferry wash now. We've got wind chop all around us, and the boat just handles it, you know, like a breeze. Like right now over these waves, yeah, no problems. Not even any water up on deck, and I'm doing that at speeds of 26 knots. So that's very, very comfortable. Speeds of 26 knots and RPMs of 3,300. I'm just going to keep feeling the hull for now before I start opening it up, and I might just do a turn down here in the bay and just feel the boat out. So nice, appropriate amount of heel in the turn. Visibility, like you would expect on a sexy rib like this, is just epic. You can see all points in all directions, and so for maneuverability coming into docks and coming into other boats, it's not going to be an issue. Still sitting on that 23, 24 knots. I do have 25, gusting probably 27 knots of breeze from the northwest today, so I'm just conscious of that as I drive around. So what I'm going to do now is actually going to hook the boat, and I'm going to start going downwind. That's my secret. On days like today, I can't actually fly the drone too quick, so it's very hard for me to cut to the aerial shots to give you the high speed reference. So I just have to take a gamble and fly downwind and hope that the drone can keep up with the boat, which in this boat's case we couldn't, because the boat's too fast. But yeah, I envisage a boat like this just being perfect for somebody wanting to have something pretty simple, straightforward, very sexy, and capable for a good number of people for just those quick day trips, for going to places, for jumping from boat to boat, visiting your friends, going to restaurants. It's perfect for that, and obviously pulling up on the beaches. We are cruising around right now at 30 knots, and it just doesn't feel like we're doing 30 knots. That's 3,600 revs, and the boat's just solid. Now, I feel these Adrenalina models have got a bit more V section under the waterline compared to the other ones that I've driven. I don't know if that's true or not, but they just feel a little bit more grippy, and they do chop up the waves quite nicely. Now, I am coming through an area which you normally should not enter in Sydney Harbour because there is some isolated danger markers and a bombora, so don't copy me coming through this area if the conditions were rough. I'm just doing it for the sexy drone shots, and I've made an educated decision because there's no swell today, so it is safe for me to come through. But don't go coming in here and say, oh, I saw Dan doing it, so I thought it was safe, because sometimes it's really not in there. So I'm just sitting on this 28, 30 knot speed range between 3,400 to 3,600 revs. The engines hardly even feel like they've woken up, which is so great about these 400s. That's what I love about engines like this. You've just got so much spare in the rev range to get up and boogie. And that's what you're doing about like this. So we're going to have an opportunity to point it downwind in a second. So I'm going to open it up. Coming through, still at that same speed. Apart from a little bit of bow raise on acceleration, it's a level attitude kind of boat. You do feel the beam in this as well. So the beam and the size of this rib gives you a lot of stability, and it's noticeable compared to the Adrenalina 7, which is a very stable boat. But this is just so much bigger. So now here we go. Oh, that's 30 knots of wind. So I'm going to give it some. All right, accelerating through 4,500, 4,800, straight away at 40 knots. That's an effortless 40 knots. 5,000 revs. I got more in the rev range. I'm at 45 knots. Oh! Okay, let's give it wide open. A little bit of a trim up. 5,600 revs and 50 knots, 51 knots, solid, fun, 53 knots. Oh, that's cool. Man, that's like an animal. I love it. So if you've got those sort of top speeds, oh, wow, imagine all the things you can do on a day. If you're at Manly and the girls are like useless, no, not useless, late, and you're hanging out with your friends and you've got to pick up some girlfriends at Rose Bay, you'll be back there in 5 minutes. You could do a pickup in Rose Bay and be back at lunch before your pizza's even cold. So I'm going to hook in on the inside. Oh, that's great. This is fun. I like this. I really like this. So what I'm finding myself doing, because the visibility is so epic, I'm finding myself feeling really comfortable to drive in closer to shore and get a better view, because nothing's hindering my ability to control or see what I'm doing, which I like. I'm just going to do a donut when we come into this bay here and just see how she grips. And I'm just coming in at 36 knots. I'm just going to put the engines down. I mean, a little bit of gusty wind here, and we'll just look at that. I can really cut it into the turn there. I'm doing that steady at 31 knots, and I've got more power. Okay guys, so that was quite educational and a hell of a lot of fun. What have I learned? And I wish I could have got some more exciting drone footage for you today, but the wind was really strong, and sitting downstairs in the bed down there, it's quite hard for me to judge what is going on with 30 knots of breeze. So I did my best. This thing's an animal. It's a bloody animal. At 50 knots, 53 knots top speed we saw at 6,000 revs, 40 knots effortless cruise, 30 knots feels slow. You know, at 3,400 to 3,600 revs, you're just sipping the juice of these 400s. They don't even feel like they've woken up. That just excites me, because this boat's relatively simple, very large in terms of capacity, and unbelievably capable. So if you want something that's just going to absolutely knock the guts out of you when you accelerate and really, really get up and go, and still manage its way through the chop. I didn't feel out of control at all at that 53 knots. So I was going downwind and we did have chop, and we had a little bit of wave action, but not much, you know, nothing too dangerous. If you're looking for that excitement, I think you really have to have an Adrenalina 10.5 on your list. And if you can, go for those 400s if you're, you know, the hoon. I'm sure it would be fine with a couple of 300s or 350s, looking at the weight as well. But that's just so exciting. Why wouldn't you do it? That's all I have to say. Anyway, doesn't end there. There is a walkthrough on this video. If you like more content on these boats, follow the links coming up on the screen now. My name's Dan Jones. It's been Dan's Boat Life. See you on the next one.